Hi, and welcome to Scale Model Basics. I'm Aaron Skinner, and we're going to take a look at creating molds to cast resin parts. Now, why do we want to cast resin parts? Well, there are several reasons. One may be that you have a kit part that you need a bunch of copies of because you need more for a diorama or a particular model you're building. For example, several years ago, I built an M113 ACAV. The vehicle in Vietnam had ammunition boxes all over the floor of it. I didn't have enough available to me, so I took several kit parts and I cast multiple copies of them and glued, I don't know, it was like 80 of them on the floor of that vehicle. The only way I could do that was by casting those resin parts. You may also want to correct a part in a kit because you need multiple copies of it. For example, a wheel or something that isn't quite right, so you're going to fix a little something on it and then you're going to cast multiple copies of it. Or an engine nacelle off of a multi-engined aircraft where something is wrong with the kit part and you're going to correct it. And then you can just do that once and cast multiple copies instead of trying to replicate that part several times. The other reason you might need to cast a resin part is if you've scratch built a part and you need multiple copies of that, or you want a good solid version of that part versus the scratch built part, and then you're going to cast that part for the same reason. So the first step in casting resin parts is creating a mold. And it doesn't matter how you create the master, creating the mold is the same. But there are two different kinds of molds. There are one-part and two-part molds. We're going to show you both of those. So let's talk about what you're going to need to make your molds. There are certain supplies you're going to have, something to make a mold box out of that's going to hold the rubber while it's setting. Lego blocks work really well for this. They're versatile. You can build the box to whatever shape you need. They're solid and they're reusable, and the rubber will come away from these plastic parts really easily. You'll also need, obviously, the parts you're going to cast. You need something to put the mold box on. I've got some clean sheet styrene here that'll make a nice flat surface for the top of the mold, or the bottom actually at this point, which will become the top when you get ready to cast the parts. And then you're going to need the actual casting supplies. Now, you can buy sets like this that have everything you need to cast both the molds and the resin parts. It comes with the RTV resin, or RTV rubber rather, or the silicone rubber for the molds, mold release agent, molding clay, which is used to support the mold and seal the boxes. And it also has the two-part resin in it, which you'll use when you actually cast the parts. You can find sets like this at most hobby or craft stores. To create the mold, place the molding box that you've built out of Lego onto the styrene. And then you're going to take some of the modeling clay that comes inside the set, and you just want to push it down into the inside of the mold along these edges, and this will seal that mold box and prevent the rubber from leaking under it. Just press it into place. It doesn't have to be neat, but you do want to keep the center clear because that's where your parts are going to go. It's a good idea to wear gloves when you're doing this because a lot of these products are not particularly healthy to your skin. Plus, they're just messy and they will stick to you. That pretty much seals the box and adheres it to the styrene. Now, we need to put the parts into the mold. You need to raise them above the surface slightly, and this is where you need a little bit more of this modeling clay. Figure out where the bottom of the part is going to be. If it's a part that does have a top and bottom, you want to put this onto the bottom of the part because that's going to end up being the pour plug. And if you can cut that off, you don't have to worry necessarily about restoring the detail on that side because it will probably sit on that bottom side on the model or display. So just take some of the molding clay, put it onto the bottom of the part, and then just put it onto the styrene in the mold. So I'll go ahead and do that with the other one. And same thing. Make sure it's not too close to the side so it's not going to interfere with the part. And there you go. You don't have to press too hard. You don't want the molding clay to roll up onto the sides too much. And that should complete the preparations for our one-part mold. Now let's look at how we create a two-part mold. The first thing for making a two-part mold is that you're going to place the mold box onto the sheet styrene. And in this case, you're going to take the modeling clay and you're going to fill the entire lower half of the box with the molding clay. And try to level it out as much as possible. Make sure that it's in all the corners and sealing it. This will seal the mold. Once you're satisfied that it's pretty level, you can go ahead and take the part. In this case, I want the pour plug to be on the axle end of the tire or of the wheel. And I'm going to press that down into the mold, into the clay, as far as I can get it. And then I'm going to make sure that that clay is up into that tread and so forth. That's kind of what we want to recreate. One of the nice things about resin is that it will recreate fine details. But you have to have the resin go into those parts. Now the clay is not essential for that necessarily, but you want to make sure it's good and secure. I'm going to add just a little bit more molding clay around on this side to level that out a little bit more. And now one of the crucial things about building a two-part mold is that you need to be able to align those two parts when you get ready to cast the part. So you create what we call keys. And it's really a simple process with this method is you take a little piece of molding clay and you form it into a point of some sort and you just press it into the molding clay on opposite corners. So when we cast this part and then the second part, what you'll get is keys that those two molds will fit together on. And that should make the beginning of our two-part mold. Now we're ready to mix the silicone for the mold. So the stuff that comes in this set is very specific. It is 10 parts of this base to 1 part of the catalyst. So I'm going to start by opening up the base. Now you can see it's kind of a thick material. This stuff can be messy, so I advise always having gloves and paper towels available to you. Make sure this is good and mixed up. This takes a little while to do. So that's 30 cc's. I'm going to pour that into the cup that I'm actually mixing this in. Use this to scrape as much of that out of there as I can, so I have a more accurate measure ultimately. Now you want to mix a little more than you think you need, but you don't want to overmix because then you're just wasting the rubber. Once you add the catalyst to this, it's going to set. You don't have any chance to save it. You do have about 30 minutes of working time once it's mixed together, so you don't have to rush that part of it, but you do need to use it. Now, one of the things I will tell you is that you are going to want to change your gloves if you get any of this material on them during this process. If not, you're going to touch something, it's going to transfer to it, it's going to make everything messier from that point on. This is messy enough already without adding your fingers into the mix. Now that I have the base in the cup, and that's 30 cc's of base, I need to add the catalyst, so that'll be 3 cc's of catalyst. That's a lovely color. And then we pour that into that. And then we mix. You want it to be one even color. You want to make sure that that catalyst and base are thoroughly mixed. for this to work properly. Again, you have 30 minutes of working time, so don't hesitate to make sure it's done right. Don't rush this part of the process. Patience. That's your watchword here. All right. I think that looks pretty even. So now that that's thoroughly mixed, we can go ahead and pour it into the molds. So we will pour it slowly. You want to make sure you get it into all of the corners and crevices. It will flow pretty well. Again, just go slowly. Let it level out as it will. But you want to make sure that you cover on this one part mold those parts completely. And then you can tap it a couple of times to get out any air bubbles. And you can see those bubbles coming up to the surface as it's sitting there. This will just help avoid any voids in the mold. And that completes our one-part mold. Now let's pour the two-part mold. Got some of the silicone rubber mix, and again, it's just pour it into the mold slowly, and you just want to fill up that mold. Basically, you're going to fill this one up pretty much to the top to make sure you have a good base for what will be the bottom of the mold. You just keep tapping away until you're pretty sure no more bubbles are coming up. And you can see they just sort of keep rising to the surface. That looks pretty good. Now it's all about waiting. This silicone will take somewhere between 8 and 18 hours to set. I'd leave it at, overnight or longer. Come back tomorrow and we can cast the second part of the mold for the two-part mold. And then we can go ahead and take the mold box apart for the one-part mold and see how those ammunition boxes look. So it's a day later and the RTV silicone rubber has set in these molds. So let's take a look at them, starting with the one-part mold. So what you're going to want to do is we can start by breaking the Lego. This is where the Lego is really useful for this because it comes apart easily around the box and the silicone doesn't really stick to it. You can see that clay is coming off with it. I'm going to preserve that because we can use it again. And just, like I said, that came away really easily. You can see why Lego is important. Now I can pop this off and peel the clay away, and you can see the clay which is supporting the ammunition boxes that we were casting. So I should be able to just, there we are, pry them out and get the other one out. You can see again, the part and the clay separates from the silicone really easily. And again, just pop it out. And now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but if I open this up just a little bit, you can see that there is the detail for the ammunition boxes inside these recesses. So now when we get ready to pour resin in here, we should end up with perfect replicas of those plastic ammunition boxes. So that's the single part mold. Let's take a look at what we still need to do with the two-part mold because we have some work to do. First things first, we are going to take this apart, just like we did the other one, if I can get it apart. And then we should be able to very gently peel the clay off. And then we just want to carefully remove this clay from the part. We want to get rid of that, as much of this clay as possible, because we want this to be as clean as possible. Cleaning it up with some alcohol is probably a good idea. You just want to get rid of as much of this clay residue as you can, anything that might impact the fit of the second part of the mold that we're about to produce. So we've rebuilt the box, same size and shape. I'm just going to pop the bottom, what's now going to be the bottom part of the mold, down in there, all the way to the bottom. Push it down, make sure it's up, nice up against the sides as much as possible. And then we're going to take some rubber to rubber release. This will stop the new layer of rubber sticking to the old layer. You just want to brush it over. So make sure you get it all the way around there. You want to make sure all of the rubber is covered so that this rubber doesn't stick at all. Now that's going to take about 5 minutes to dry before we can pour the rubber. So we've got a couple coats of the release fluid on this mold, so I'm ready to pour some rubber. Let's go ahead and do that now. And basically this is the same as it was when we did the other pours, but you just want to go slow and pour it in. Make sure that you get all of the mold filled. Let it flow in and around the part, down and into any of the recesses, which will help key this second part. And then just let it fill up to about the same level we had before. You'll see that little piece of clay sticking up. I put that on the end of the axle on the wheel so that we have a place to pour the resin when we get to that point. Make sure we got a good layer on top of it so that the mold has some integrity. I'm going to agitate this a little bit to get the air bubbles out, just like we did on the earlier molds. You can see them coming up to the surface there. So now I'm going to let that sit for 24 hours. Then we can pull the mold apart and show you what it looks like. So it's the next day. The rubber has completely set, so let's see what this mold looks like. First of all, I'm going to peel up all this clay, which is always fun. It comes away pretty easily from the styrene, and actually then the Lego separates from the base, and we can just break the Lego apart like we did the other molds. Again, it has the advantage of separating from the rubber really easily. It's not separating very easily, so I'm going to see if I can cut it along the margin and start it. Obviously, we didn't get enough mold release agent on there, but it looks like we do have the part separating now. Pull this off so I can pull this out of here. There we go. And what you can see is we do have the hub detail reproduced there, the tread for the tire there, and then the back side. This was a very simple wheel, so it's just a flat side, but again, you can see the tread. Well, obviously that did not work quite the way it was supposed to. Obviously, it's a good idea to make sure that you use enough of the rubber to rubber separation agent before you pour the second part of the mold. The good news is it did separate with enough of a key that I can align these two parts pretty cleanly, and I should be able to get them together and then pour resin into that top and hopefully get a series of good-looking wheels out of it. So now that we have our molds, we're ready to cast some resin. I'm Aaron Skinner. We'll see you next time.